Gayatri.
Hi, Misha.
Okay, so hi everyone. I'm starting in next 2 minutes. Maybe we'll just wait for 2 minutes more and then begin.
We can't hear you, Gayatri.
My screen seems to have shifted, or should I shift, or it's okay?
Actually, I can't turn my video on. It's saying the host has stopped your video.
I have the same thing.
Okay, now I can. Okay.
So I welcome all the participants, and then I would welcome the panel on women empowerment for economic prosperity. Just to welcome all the participants to this conclave, second day of the conclave. As we all know that we are celebrating this third edition of India Financial Literacy Conclave. And this is happening on the virtual platform after 2 editions, which happened on the physical mode, and it was in the auditorium. We were face to face. So I'm really excited and happy to welcome you all. And to take this forward, today's session, we have the session chair, Ms. Gayatri Shrivastava, an LSR alumnus and media academic, a veteran in the media management, journalism, and also in teaching. Plus years of experience. I'm sure you all are going to have a wonderful time in this next 1 hour, 15 minutes. She also has a chat show called Gupshup with Gayatri, where she highlights a lot of successful women and inspires other women also. So nothing much to add more. I would say it's I think a lot to in store for all the people who have attended, who have joined the webinar early. So with no more further additions, I will request Gayatri to please take the stage and then take the session forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Praveen. Pleasure being here. I hope my audio is fine.
Perfect, yeah.
Yeah. इंडियन वित्तीय साक्षरता संगोष्ठी में आपका स्वागत है। इस साल का विषय है समावेशी समृद्धि को साकार करें। Welcome to the Indian Literacy Financial Conclave 2020. The conclave focuses on areas around financial literacy, investor education, and investor awareness to help build a financially empowered community. The theme of this year's conclave is Making Inclusive Prosperity Happen. The conclave will set an actionable agenda on the sub-themes around youth, women, farmers, startups, and MSME. Today's panel discussion is on the topic, Women Empowerment for Economic Prosperity. फाइनेंशियल इंक्लूजन के कॉन्क्लेव में विमेन एम्पावरमेंट का क्या स्थान है? इन दोनों विषयों पर कोई संबंध है क्या? क्या विमेन एम्पावरमेंट वाकई हमारे देश को खुशहाली के रास्ते ले जा सकता है? कैसे और क्यों? To discuss this and other related issues, we have with us 3 remarkable, accomplished, inspiring women. It's such a pleasure to have you all on the panel here. We have Dr. Urvashi Sahni, Ms. Natasha Jethanandani, and Ms. Misha Sharma. I'll be discussing with them the issues around women empowerment and economic prosperity. But let me start by introducing our panelists. Dr. Urvashi Sahni is the founding president and CEO of Study Hall Education Foundation, Lucknow. She is a social entrepreneur, women's rights activist, and educationist. Through her various organizations, she has been working for the rights of children and women for over 3 decades. She is a leading expert in school governance, curriculum reform, and teacher training with a special focus on girls' education and the use of technology in education. She is the recipient of many national and international awards. She is a non-resident fellow at the Center for Universal Education, Brookings Institution. She was also awarded the Ashoka Fellowship in the year 2011 and has received Berkeley's Haas International Award for our efforts to reform education in India. All this to show that we have on our panel someone who's so experienced, who has such a deep understanding of the impact education can have on women's empowerment. Urvashi, may I now request you, Dr. Sahni, may I request you to give your opening remarks on the session?
Thank you very much, Gayatri. And thank you, Awoke India, for inviting me here. And Gayatri, for that thundering introduction. That is normally a good thing and a bad thing. It's a bad thing because then you have to live up to it. So let me do my best. All right. I will speak in Hindi and English both as requested by Praveen ji. And being in UPI, that should not be so difficult. So, आपका शीर्षक है that economic empowerment for prosperity. I mean, women's empowerment, women's economic empowerment for prosperity. I want to change it a little. I want to call it women's economic empowerment for women's independence and for gender equality. आजकल मोदी जी कहे जा रहे हैं कि आत्मनिर्भर होना चाहिए, भारत को आत्मनिर्भर होना चाहिए. तो अगर इसमें मैं कहती हूँ अगर औरतों को आत्मनिर्भर होना है तो फिर उनको इकोनॉमिक एम्पावरमेंट की बहुत जरूरत है. एंड खासकर इन आवर कंट्री, आई जस्ट वांट टू पेंट द सिनेरियो. पहले जब हम औरतों की आत्मनिर्भरता की बात करते हैं या ऑटोनॉमी की बात करते हैं, इंडिपेंडेंस, स्वावलंबन, तो औरतों को दे आर नेवर एक्सपेक्टेड टू बी ऑटोनमस. वो तिलक जी ने कहा था स्वराज मेरा जन्म सिद्ध अधिकार है और उसे मैं लेकर रहूंगा. औरतों ने भी कहा, दे मार्च्ड. लेकिन आज देख लीजिए कितने हो गए, तो कितनी औरतें स्वावलंबी हैं? स्वराज कितनी औरतों को मिला? नहीं मिला. और वो इसलिए कि हमारे समाज में औरतों को ऑटोनॉमी के लायक समझा ही नहीं जाता है. और इसीलिए अगर आप देखिए कि आज इस पैनल की जरूरत पड़ी कि विमेन्स एम्पावरमेंट होनी चाहिए, राइट, और क्यों इकोनॉमिक एम्पावरमेंट होनी चाहिए. और लेट में थोड़े आंकड़े मैं बता दूं कि औरतों को ना वैसे कभी अडल्ट समझा ही नहीं जाता. बच्चा बनाए रखते हैं कि वो कहा है ना कि बचपन में पिता, फिर पति, फिर भाई, फिर बेटा, राइट, वो संभालेगा, आपको अब खुद संभालने की जरूरत नहीं है. और फाइनेंसेस में के मामले में तो ये बहुत ही ज्यादा देखा जाता है that women do not control their own finances, even highly educated ones, many of them don't. और दुनिया भर में women have been economically disenfranchised. लेकिन मैं इंडिया के आंकड़े बताऊं. In terms of participation in the labor force, only 23%, mind you. But इसमें what you must count is that a lot of that women's unpaid work is not counted as part of being part of the labor work. और unpaid work में Indian women do 10 times more unpaid work than men do. And this is 40% more than the women in South Africa and China, our counterparts over there. और ये unpaid work क्या है? All the care work, very gendered, women do it. किसी ने बताया, there was a study, OECD study, that in India, women work for 357 minutes a day in unpaid work, men only 52 minutes. So अब आप हिसाब लगा लीजिए. Okay. And what is wrong with unpaid work? Many things. एक तो it is unrecognized and it is undervalued. और इसी के कारण they are not able to take up paid work. And उसमें, and why is paid work better? One, you get paid, so you have money and you have some power. Secondly, benefits आते हैं उसके साथ, pension मिलती है. अब और भी कई benefits उसके साथ मिलते हैं जो unpaid work में नहीं मिलता. And most terrible, the worst of all, it is totally unvalued. Totally unvalued. यारे औरतें, आप क्या करते? नहीं, मैं कुछ नहीं करती. आप क्या है? मैं तो सिर्फ housewife. And if you look at farmers, a lot of the farming work is done by women. And there is this UN Women study, and here's what I'm just going to quote from that straight away. उसमें ये कहा है that it is rarely recognized as work. Unpaid care and domestic work is valued to be 10 to 39% of the gross domestic product, GDP, and can contribute more to the economy than the manufacturing, commerce, or transportation sectors. Still, we don't count it as any work, and it leaves women very, very insecure. The other thing is that women are left with double burden. Many women on this panel सब बताएंगे, and many women in the audience. I know a lot of other women who work for us. सारा स्कूल का काम और फिर घर का काम, double. Okay, and many times they burn out and they can't do it. And they will get up in the morning, tiffin भी बनाएंगी, सबको खिलाएंगी भी, नाश्ता भी करेंगी, फिर काम पे भी जाएंगी, फिर घर जल्दी से आना है क्योंकि सासू जी is waiting, and lunch भी देना है या dinner भी देना है. And what does our man do? कि चल अखबार खोल के पढ़ लिए, and I'm so tired, जरा शायद ला दो, पानी उठा के दे दो, right? And so ये double burden is really a double whammy, and उसके कारण also a lot of women don't. And then on top of that, think of it ना, in the end मर्दों का capital बनते जाता है and औरतों का capital होता ही नहीं है. And the third thing, property के मामले में only 12% of Indian women own any property. And why is that bad thing? वैसे तो कहने को घर वाली, लेकिन माँ बाप कहते हैं तुम अपने घर चली जाओगी, तुम पराया धन. वहां जाओ तो वो कहता है तुम अपने घर से क्या लाई और तुम मेरे घर से निकल जाओ अगर मेरी बात ना मानो, और घर उसका होता ही नहीं. So women who don't have property first are left very vulnerable. Can you imagine not having a home, an unconditional home? And just imagine only 12% women have it. And the worst part of it is that why do women not protest? Why don't they ask for it? Because they have also bought into the narrative कि वो इस लायक है ही नहीं, कि they have always to be taken care of. शादी कर लोगी तो उसके बाद आपको देख लेंगे, और घर तुम्हारे अपने घर का की क्या जरूरत है, पति का घर तुम्हारा घर. Not really, not really. वो पता चलता है जब पहुंचो पति के घर तो, right? फिर अपनी फाइनेंसेस क्यों नहीं कंट्रोल करते? पढ़ी लिखी प्रिंसिपल्स ऑफ स्कूल, डॉक्टर्स, क्यों नहीं? क्योंकि वो सिखाया जाता है कि अरे you can't do it, you can't. ये तुम्हारे बस का नहीं, just let it be ना, मैं ही कर दूंगा. And just like maths is not for women, वो तुम्हारे जो maths तुम्हारे बस का नहीं है, तुम humanities ले लो. It's the same thing. देखो जी, it's also a very important way of controlling women, because when you control your finances, you control your life. And if you don't control your finances, you can never control your life. So सही माने में अगर आप कहो तो आप सशक्त तभी होते हैं जब आपको आर्थिक सशक्तिकरण आपका होता है. जब आर्थिक रूप से आप आत्मनिर्भर हैं तो आप एक स्वावलंबी सम्मान इंसान हैं. And that has been denied women for a long time. So the first, and even now, and world over, by the way, India is particularly bad in that. So even now, it is very important. The first very important thing is that women must learn the important lesson: I am equal, autonomous. Autonomous, very, very important, which means I have the right to direct the course of my life. अपने जीवन की मुझे ही चलाना है और अपने मन से चलाना है. So whereas you said, that women's economic empowerment for prosperity of the nation, of course it will add to the prosperity of the nation. I mean, it's not rocket science. कि अगर 50% को पीछे छोड़ा है तो include करोगे तो obviously होगा. But more important than that, Gayatri, and why I'm hammering that home is, why are women always only instrumentalized? कि अरे it's good for the country तो चलो दे दो. अरे भाई, it's my human right, इसलिए दो. Gender equality is my human right.
Absolutely.
It's my human right. वो क्या है? जन्म सिद्ध अधिकार है और मैं इसको लेकर रहूंगी वाली बात. ओके, तो फिर नारा लगाओ. वो आप जन्म सिद्ध अधिकार हुआ करे. स्वराज तो आपको तभी मिलेगा जब आप आर्थिक रूप से आपको स्वराज होगा. And we must stop educating and raising our girls to become these wives and daughters and continuous infants, all their lives infants. वैसे तो infant हम लोग पैदा करते हैं, लेकिन फिर भी नहीं तुमसे ये नहीं होगा, तुमसे ये नहीं होगा, तुमसे ये नहीं होगा, ये चलता रहता है. So I want to wrap up my opening remarks now, Gayatri, just by saying that I'm so glad Evoke India has decided to include this topic in your Indian Financial Literacy Conclave. And not just for the prosperity of the country, which I want to say that if women are not given their due right, if they are not treated as equals, if we do not dismantle patriarchy, this country can never progress. Just forget it. It will just never happen. वो लिखित ले लो. It's almost like 2 equals 2. You know, it's like a mathematical equation. Equal karoge to hoga, nahi karoge to nahi hoga, right? And so in terms of economic, if we do not re-enfranchise them, do not give them their economic rights and make them aware of it, then too there can be no prosperity of the country, and it is a violation of their human rights and our constitution. And with that, I will pause till you ask me again.
Thank you, Dr. Sani. Thank you for raising such pertinent points. And I'm happy to introduce the next speaker. And I can say that she's someone who's actually economically independent, someone who's broken many glass ceilings. She's someone who's a techie, a woman and a techie who's mastered maths. So she's the kind of role model, you know, our young girls should be looking at. Let me welcome Natasha Jethanandani. Natasha is the Chief Technology Officer at Kaleidofin Private Limited. Kaleidofin is a fintech platform that aims at bringing financial inclusion to the informal sector and underbanked customers via simple, easy to access solutions. It leverages networks such as Asian self-help groups, microfinance institutions at enormous scales. Before that, Natasha was the head of engineering for the Bank Bazaar website, which is one of India's leading online marketplaces for financial services. Natasha has an MSc in computer science from Stanford University. Natasha, we'd like to invite you here for your opening remarks on the topic, women empowerment and economic prosperity, which has been redefined by Urvashi.
Yeah, I love the redefinition. Dr. Urvashi, big footsteps to follow. I could not agree with you more on all your comments. Thank you for setting us up so well. I absolutely agree with you that, you know, by definition, unless we start with giving women that equal spot and those equal opportunities, we can't even start. And we cannot even begin to talk about empowerment. So I'm very glad you set that baseline foundation of what we're really discussing today, that we need to raise our girls to be independent thinkers, to be financial planners, to be running their own lives and being equal partners with their husbands, not just raised to be daughters and wives. So thank you. I fully agree. In fact, I wanted to, you know, in my opening remarks, since Dr. Urvashi set it up so beautifully, focus on the second part of this problem, which is around how important financial literacy and financial planning is, because could not agree more that women have very little access to that space today. In fact, I think, you know, some interesting statistics. I think only about 33% of women are known to take independent decisions today. They are mutual fund investors today, whereas, you know, a much higher number of around 70% of men make these decisions today and actual investors in the market. So there's very, very clear data in the market that also reflects this gap between men and women. And, you know, at Kaleidofin, as Gayatri mentioned, we're trying to build a neobank that really enables people to simplify financial planning. It is a tough problem. And we're trying to make it easier for people, make it more accessible. And we find, you know, actually for us, about 95% of our customers are women today. The reason for this is we actually partner with a lot of microfinance institutions across the country, including Sonata, Cashpur, big institutions that in turn have, you know, large customer bases that are women. And we find in these interactions that women are extremely goal-oriented. And when I say goal-oriented, financial goal-oriented. They have a very clear idea of the financial goals of their family. They have a very clear idea about the short-term goals and long-term goals. They're also extremely disciplined, we find, extremely detail-oriented in the way they approach a problem and what their family needs to achieve. I did want to step back and also share the problem itself that I think makes financial planning a bit difficult. And maybe to assist with this, I wanted to just share my screen for a short bit. So I think one of the problems we find or we have identified at Kaleidofin is that, if you leave the top 100 to 150 million people in India who are educated and have access to a lot of financial planning tools, there are almost more than 600 million people who are earning smaller amounts and who don't have great access to formal financial services. When I say formal financial services, I mean easy access to either the mutual funds and equity markets, or banking products, or insurance, or loans. And we find that many reasons for this. There is a lot of these products are designed and catered via the larger financial institutions for that top 100 to 150 million people. So one of the big important problems we feel is that the solutions themselves and the products themselves need to be designed for this audience, and also brought to them in a way that they can understand it more easily and invest in it more easily. Customers are, the true notion of financial advice is very difficult to access. And I am looking forward to this panel discussion to see how, what are the tools we can bring to the forefront to make advice and understanding finances and understanding and getting more financially literate is something that we can make accessible to far more people across India. Tier 2, tier 3 cities, rural areas, even within urban areas have better penetration. Technology today also focuses more on smartphone owning, English speaking, highly educated people, whereas I feel like there is a way to make this far more accessible to much larger audiences, and something that we need to do a lot more. So with that, I just wanted to stop there. I wanted to, in my opening remarks, lay out what we feel some of the problems are. Over to you, Gayatri.
Okay. Thank you for sharing your thoughts, Natasha. We'll come back to all the topics you've highlighted later. Our third panelist is Misha Sharma. Welcome, Misha. Misha is a research manager at the Chennai-based Dwara Research. Dwara Research is a policy research institution focused on ensuring that every individual and every enterprise has complete access to financial services. It believes in the deeply transformative power of finance in unlocking the potential of individuals, households, enterprises, and local governments. Misha has more than 6 years of experience in this subject, in this area. She's also worked with Goldman Sachs for 2 years and holds a master's degree in economics from the University of Edinburgh. Welcome, Misha. Would you like to share your thoughts now with the panel? And
sure. Thank you, Gayatri. Am I audible?
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much, Gayatri, for that introduction. And really, thank you so much, Dr. Urvashi and Natasha. It's a great honor to be a part of this stellar panel. And really, in terms of my opening remarks, I just wanted to, talk a little bit about the problem statement. While Dr. Urvashi has already laid it down so well for us, I just wanted to, in terms of one high-level fact, just sort of share that, if there is one statistic that's really very telling in terms of where the inequalities lie and where India is currently in terms of the status of women empowerment, I think you can look at the Global Gender Gap Index ranking. And this is conducted by World Economic Forum, and India has in fact been ranked 112 out of 153 countries, and in fact has slipped by 4 places in the previous year. So really this kind of shows that there's obviously a lot of scope for improvement in terms of where we are as a country and what are the inequalities that we have to bridge. I really like the four dimensions that this index focuses on, and I just would like to highlight that as, setting the problem statement itself. So as Dr. Urvashi mentioned, one of the key parameters that this index looks at is the economic participation and opportunity. And really it's just earth shattering to know that the gender gap in terms of the labor force participation is 56%. I mean, that's huge, and that's something that we should not be proud of at all. We are far behind countries like even Bangladesh, where the female labor force participation stands at 60%. And in the recent years, the female labor force participation has just declined, and this is something that we care deeply about, both at Dwara Research, but obviously as citizens of the country as well, because if women are not in the workforce, as the other panelists have mentioned, you cannot be financially independent. And so this is really at the heart of the matter. And why we focus so much on this particular aspect is because this has a very as per research has shown to find very strong and positive correlation between economic participation of women and their empowerment in terms of their agency, their voice, or their position in terms of household decision making, etc. So I think this is really hits at the heart of the matter. Some of the other parameters, obviously, that this index talks about is the education attainment, right? While there has been substantial progress in bridging the gender gap in education attainment, there still is a gender gap, and currently stands at 3.5 years of schooling, which is that a male child is likely to have 3.5 years of additional schooling compared to a female child. Similarly, if you look at the health and survival statistics such as infant mortality, child mortality, under 5 mortality rates, then the male childs are doing better in this parameter as well. And then finally, one final indicator that I'd like to leave the audience with, because it's really something that hit very hard at me, which is the political empowerment statistic. And only 13% of parliamentarians in India are women. I mean, that's something, right? Like, that's really bad. The fact that 87% of parliament is captured by men, I mean, we should be totally against that, and we should do everything possible to make sure that it comes at 50-50. I think this is one of the statistics that's really kind of showing what the problem is. If female are not being represented at the parliament, obviously you can imagine that policies will not be designed keeping women in mind. So I think I just wanted to add to the problem statement a little bit by highlighting some of those statistics. And particularly, if I can just take 5 minutes to talk about role of finance in women empowerment, given that I come from Dwara Research and I have lot of research experience in understanding the financial inclusion movement in India and what we have done in the last 10 years. And frankly speaking, India is actually one of those countries which has been at the forefront of financial inclusion movement and policy making. In fact, it stands really high in terms of the enabling environment for financial inclusion. So if there's one parameter where India is doing really well, it's actually this, ensuring that women are getting access to financial services, credit, savings, and bank account for that matter, as we know through the Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana, universalized bank accounts among Indian households. So I think that's really important, because bank accounts are a gateway to a suite of other services, right? So if you have a bank account, you're more likely to have a savings product, a credit product, an insurance, a pensions product. So I mean, if you think about it at an absolute level, sure, just having a bank account does not mean much. But given that we were not doing very well in this indicator 10 years ago, and now have achieved close to an 80% ownership of bank account is really remarkable. Another thing that's really remarkable here is the gender gap that we've been able to address in ownership of bank account. And it has really come down from from close to 30% 3 years ago to now the gender gap being only 6 percentage points. So, so roughly women have 77% of Indian women have access to a bank account, whereas 83% of Indian men have access to bank account. And this statistic, or this gap in the statistics has been reduced by a great margin, I would say. So just wanted to lay that out in terms of what role finance can play in empowering women. As we know, finance itself, be it men or women, is really pivotal in managing risk, in building resilience, in smoothing consumption, right? So if you have to think about it in very layman terms, if there's a rural woman who is working in the agricultural sector, and she is the primary income earner of the household, and suppose she meets with a personal accident that requires her to make some health expenditure, then having access to health insurance, having access to cashless health insurance facilities, etc., would just ensure that she's able to rely on a formal financial service and not spend out of her own pocket, because as we know, health expenditure or unforeseen health expenditure for that matter is one of the biggest factors for pushing people into poverty. Right. So that's really crucial. That's just one simple example that shows how access to formal financial services like insurance, pensions can really build resilience and enable better management of risk. I think I just want to make one more remark, which is in terms of microfinance. I cannot talk about role of finance and leave microfinance out of the way, because as Natasha mentioned, microfinance has been a very pivotal movement in India, providing access to credit to women. 99% of the microfinance sector clients are women, right? And so while you have an array of studies telling you that access to credit did not empower women, I mean that's the second step. The first step is just mobilizing women, including them into the ambit of formal financial services, getting them into a network. All of that is so crucial, which they did not have means to do unless there was microfinance in place. So I would really like to just say that the microfinance movement in India has been really pivotal in pushing access to credit to women. 99% of the clients are women. So that's a point worth reiterating. So I'll stop here and would like to focus more on that once you come back to me, Gayatri. Thank you so much once again for giving me the opportunity.
Thank you, Misha. It's good to know that it's not all bad, that, we have been taking baby steps, and especially when you mentioned the role of microfinance and, the fact that so many women now have bank accounts at least. But coming back to Dr. Sahni, you're talking about Swaraj for women, economic independence. It's the need of the hour. So what do you think are the factors holding women back? You need to unmute yourself also, Doctor.
Many things, as I mentioned, and I think the most important one of that is patriarchy. And by patriarchy, what I mean is, I mentioned earlier, the whole infantilizing of women and continuously building, they're actually taught not to think of themselves as equal persons. They're taught right from the womb. I mean, you were mentioning statistics, Misha, in terms of gender inequality. Do you know that almost 500,000 girls are killed in the womb because of selective abortion? Jab tak unko paida nahi hone dete, so clearly you know what their value is. Right? So they are taught that they must be dependent. Ye dependent mindset shuru se bachpan se, and schools do nothing to fix that either. Okay, so they never learn the lesson, very important lesson, that I'm an equal person, autonomous person, I deserve respect, and I have the right to live my life according to my own choice. Everyone, both my panelists, co-panelists, I learned so much. Thank you both, Natasha and Misha, that you've been talking about how, women, they can access all the financial services, etc. The point is this, that they don't, that is, if they feel that they are, it's like to apne aap ko samjhe, that they deserve it, that they can do it. The whole thing, what they're taught is that this is not for them. This area is not for them. So at Study Hall Education Foundation, by the way, we teach them that the very important lesson, educational lesson in their core curriculum is that girls must learn, very poor girls and rich girls, all girls, rural girls, women, that you are an equal person, autonomous person. You know, Janma Siddha Adhikar, we teach them that. That is something and we believe that lessons of equality are as important as lessons of math and science. Then the other thing we get them to understand is that, hey, listen, marriage is not your inevitable goal. You can if you want to. You can want to or not want to. And it should not be seen as a career. See, that is what will take care of your life, right? And they have examples at home. कि पिता दारू भी पीता है, मारता भी है, कमाता भी नहीं है. Mother is working in 7 homes. फिर भी मार भी खा रही है, घर भी वो उसका ही कहलाता है, and there is no kind of sense of empowerment at all. So we try to deconstruct all of this. We put into place a critical feminist pedagogy. And with your permission, Gayatri, I have a small video, and I have a little that I would really like to share. And you know, we are talking about good news. Well, I will have more good news to share. That when you work with students like this, we also get them to do life plans. Misha and Natasha, you'll be happy to hear. They'll probably be lining up for your financial services, where we tell them, okay, plan your life. So, okay, you want to study this, where will you get the money from? This is what career do you want? बचपन से बड़े होके क्या बनोगी? No, शादी होगी तो क्या होगा? None of that. कि बड़े होके तो क्या बनोगी? कैसे बनोगी? पैसे कहाँ से आएंगे? फिर क्या करोगी? And I want to share this very heartening, and you know, by the way, our school has the highest retention rates, and they all transition to higher education. And you know, nationally, how there are about 14% or something that go into higher education. I'm not exactly clear about my stats, but I think it's it's a huge gender gap. And then now we have entrepreneurs, we have girls who have bought their own plot because they have understood कि अपना घर होना बहुत जरूरी होता है. Right? So let me just show you, just share my screen quickly.
Sure.
Yeah, give me a minute. Okay, here it is. Have I done the right thing? Am I okay? Yeah. Can you see it? Yeah. All right. So, you know, for us, we believe that empowerment means becoming aware of one's subordination. All these happy statistics that we've been talking about, unhappy ones of gender gap, girls must know this. Boys must also know this. And analyzing its structural causes. See, it's not their fault. They are not ninnies. उस society, समाज का ढांचा ऐसा है, हमारे घरों का ढांचा ऐसा है, उनको ये सिखाया जाता है. And then to learn to perceive yourself as an autonomous, equal person, worthy of respect. And then you act from that belief to overcome one's marginalization. So ये नहीं होगा. So nobody is coming for anything, all the services that there exist. Okay, here is Lakshmi, and I want you, she will tell her own story. But Lakshmi, mother died when she was 13, father is an alcoholic, इनकी किताबें बेचकर अपना दारू खरीदता था, पैसे नहीं दिए. There were 5 siblings, youngest one 1 year old. And how she worked in 7 homes, sister worked in 3, brothers gave tiffins, 5-year-old cooked to look after that 1-year-old also. 1400 rupees lekar, she managed to raise the family. And where she is today, she runs her own business. And I will tell you about that. I think you'll love to hear it from her own words. Here you are. This is a movie she made.
Hello, I am Lakshmi from India. I live in a small house with my family. I have 3 sisters and a brother. I am eldest of them all. My younger sister Aarti likes to play with her clay toys. Elder sister Radha is a brilliant cook. Although we don't have a proper kitchen and stove, Radha still manages to provide us a fair meal. Lalita and me work as domestic help in several houses. One of the house I work for is of Sharma family. They are very nice people. Their daughter Rani is my good friend. My dad is an alcoholic and spends all his money on alcohol and never support family, neither financially nor emotionally. All this time Prerna School has been our haven. Our teachers never let us miss our late mother. All my friends at Prerna are like my sisters. We laugh together and cry together. My journey in search of a home ends here.
You know, this was made by her 10 years ago.
Wow.
Or more. Wait. So have a look. This is Lakshmi flowering in school. And this is Lakshmi at her workplace. She got a job in a telecalling center, earning 6,000 rupees. Then it went on to 27,000 rupees. Then because of sexual harassment at the workplace, which Natasha, Gayatri and Misha are another very important unspoken of reason why women are where they are. She left, and guess what she did? She thought about it. She was the best performing person there. And she said, you know, her friends told her, if you could do that, then you can start your own business. So she said, I can do the same thing. We gave her a room and an office somewhere, just a computer, and she started to work there. And she borrowed 10,000 rupees from us, actually Anand Bhaiya, and then another 10,000 rupees when she needed it, and then another 10,000 rupees. And guess what? Currently, and this is just about 7 or 8 months ago, and now she has her own office. She's employing 5 people. Monthly sale in October was 3,20,000. She has bought herself a plot for 11 lakhs, where she is now paying her EMI. She has got a bachelor. All this while, she got her bachelor's and she got an MBA. Okay. And now I asked her, I said, monthly kharcha batao zara. So she says, I have 6,200 mera rent. 32,005 employees ko dena. And these are our own Prerna alum girls, her brother and her sister. By the way, they're all educated now, grown up. And she takes home 30,000 for ghar ka kharcha. Though she said, I'm setting up my business, so I still have to keep on investing in it. And this is what they make, right? So this is what I mean. Look at this child, how the right kind, and she says, if I had not learned that usne Atmanirbhar to shuru se thi. But she was able to aspire to all this because she was taught that, you know, you are an equal person. We built aspirations. We built the capacity to aspire. Once you've done that, then, you know, all this comes. I said, तुमने सीखा कैसे? You're a genius यार. मेरी बेटी ने अपने लिए 11 लाख का अकल नहीं आई, उसको कैसे करूं? She said, आंटी मैं जमा करती रही, फिर मैंने रेकरिंग में डाला, फिर मैंने उसको फिक्स डिपॉजिट में डाला, मेरा वो हो गया. एंड यहाँ पर ऑल्सो शी सेइंग, एंड आई हैव टू कीप, अभी भी मुझे कुछ लोन लेना पड़ता है. शी वर्क फॉर बैंक्स, ये बैंक्स का सब बनाती है. शी सेज वो टाइम से देते नहीं, अभी भी मेरा 7 लाख पेंडिंग है, लेकिन वो दे देते हैं बिकॉज मेरे पास उसका पूरा रिकॉर्ड है. सो विद अ लिटिल सपोर्ट इन द बिगिनिंग, जस्ट सम incubation help. She didn't need to go to a bank, though she took an EMI for her home loan. Okay, look where this child is. And I have many stories like that, though she's our star, right? And in terms of buying plots, and everybody wants to buy plots which they are buying. Everyone has realized अपना unconditional घर होना बहुत जरूरी है, क्योंकि कभी भी निकाल दे. I'll stop there. I have other story. I have one more short case study. If I have time, we can do that later. But I don't want to take up more time from my panelists, so I will stop there. But just the last message, that we must teach lessons of equality and Atmanirbharta, like we teach lessons of math and science. Education का gap तो आपने ठीक बताया मीशा, but the point is किस तरह की education पढ़ी लिखी औरतें कौन सा अपना control कर रही हैं? उनको भी लगता है कि हम नहीं कर सकते, right? So importantly ये ना कि आप सब कुछ कर सकते हो, आपका अधिकार है, और अपनी फाइनेंसेस को कंट्रोल करोगे तो अपनी लाइफ को कंट्रोल करोगे, और आपको अपनी लाइफ कंट्रोल करने का पूरा अधिकार है. किसी और को उसकी बागडोर मत दो. साथ साथ चलाओ, लेकिन दोनों शेयर करो. घर है, मैरिटल होम है, उसमें क्यों नहीं अधिकार मांगती औरतें? नहीं मांगती, डर लगता है कि सब लोग क्या कहेंगे, एंड पतियों को अच्छा भी नहीं लगता, बाय द वे. ओके, अपने भाइयों से प्रॉपर्टी का कभी नहीं मांगती, बल्कि दे हैप्पीली राइट इट अवे, क्योंकि दे वांट टू बी गुड एंड पायस. इन्हें मैं रिलेशनशिप नहीं खराब करना चाहती. तो भाई को रिलेशनशिप की नहीं है कोई वैल्यू, उनको भी तो नहीं खराब करना चाहिए ना. तो प्यार से तुम भी दे दो, अब तो कानून भी कहता है, right? So we have a constitution with laws. We have all these great financial services, but women must know that they have the right to access.
Yeah.
That is very, very important. So rights literacy, economic rights literacy is a very important thing. It precedes financial literacy.
Yeah. Thank you,
I'll
Urvashi.
just stop sharing my screen. Ah, there she is with President
With
Obama,
Obama.
by the way.
Wow.
There you go. She presented at the Obama Summit in 2019. Yeah.
Yeah. You all seem so, yeah, she seems really very much at home, so comfortable. You
Yeah.
could be awed here in the presence of Barack Obama. But really such an inspiring story of Lakshmi. And I think it just underscores the fact that, education, the right kind of education, as you're saying, equality, autonomy can have such a beneficial impact on a girl's life. So coming to you, Natasha. So we've seen, education has really helped Lakshmi, and she's taken the step towards financial literacy. So how can more people become financially literate?
Yeah.
There,
No, I
because
think
we have a lot of students in the audience, and when they're hearing this, we hope that there's some take home, and they also learn to navigate, these thoughts on equality, and also how to become financially literate.
No, absolutely. I think it's a great question, and I think step one is my recommendation to everyone in the audience, whether you're male, female, is that this is very important to do, and do it as early as possible. I think even as early as high school is a good time to try and understand what financial independence means. And there are a lot of basics that you can learn along the way in terms of what would it take for me to become independent and run my own life. What if I was not staying with my parents? What if I needed to pay for my own education? What if I needed to pay for my own marriage a few years from now? I think in the Indian society we are raised to have very, very strong familial bonds, which is fantastic. But at the same time, trying to understand what goes behind it, I think can go a long way in terms of becoming financially literate. I think also, this problem, I think, is always much greater for women than men. I think, even men in India do this a little bit later than men internationally. I've spent many years in the US, and I went when I was 16 years old. And I found that the high school students around me were already thinking about this. They were already thinking about, what does it take for me to, pay for my own education? How do I not take the money? How do I do a job on the side? How do I do an internship? And I think it changed my perspective a lot. I did internships through every year of my college. So after I was 16, every summer I worked. But it is not a very common approach in India. But I think, making your own money, understanding, you understand the work that goes behind it. And I think then you start thinking about how to grow that money. Because you realize how much effort it takes. I also think going out there and accessing resources is very important. I think different people have access to different kinds of resources. Right now, there's a lot of information available, but I find that it's also very important for us to build systems and products and platforms that also do a much better job of reaching audiences in India that don't know to go access this information. That is definitely a place Kaleidofin comes from. And that's one of the big reasons I joined, this company. I come from several other organizations. I've worked at Google and Microsoft in the past. But for me, what really compelled me about Kaleidofin was the need to go out and reach the segments in society which are not proactively going out and trying to get this information. And that does tend to be, large swaths of women across many, many different areas, gig economy workers. You look at, delivery boys today who are coming into the workforce for the first time. And I think what's very important to answer your question about how to work towards becoming financially literate is also to simplify how that information is presented to them I feel like today a lot of financial products are presented from the perspective of the supplier. So, if there is a mutual fund, it is presented purely from the mutual fund perspective. If there is an insurance policy, the, very details of that are presented to a customer. The financial product provider defines how it's presented. The sales representative who is out in the field is incentivized to meet certain targets. But I think I think what's very important is to take a more customer-oriented approach to solve this problem. Like you look at an Amazon, right? They're trying to sell you products on e-commerce, and they're taking a very customer-driven approach. What is a customer looking for? I think that's something we really need to bring in financial products as well. A customer is looking for an easy way to meet their financial goals in life. And I think that if we approach it that way, are you trying to get your child educated? For that, you need a combination of savings, maybe credit, maybe insurance. And how do we simplify those terms? How do we package those products to bring the customer what they really need at that stage in my life? What I may need when I'm 22 is very different from what I may need when I'm 40. And depending on what my income is, depending on what my work is. And I think really personalizing that product to understand the customer and bring it to them would take us a long way. So I think there are two things. One is to say, seek out financial literacy. But I think at the same time, in India, we need to do a lot more on financial inclusion. Misha, I'm very glad to hear we're doing well. But I think it really should revolve around customer centricity. And just in our own work, we find that customers are really able to relate to this simplified solution. And in fact, what is a great example to us is that we have a lot of customers who have signed up for our solutions. But what's even more telling is that many of our own customers turn into what we call Kaleido Assist, Kaleido Sahelis, where they go out and in turn explain the product to their friends, to their networks. And to me, that's the true example of financial literacy. When you are convinced about the benefit to your life, where you are trying to go out and also reach out. And they also see that as a way to build more financial stability. They get, referrals for it. So I find that that's a very clear example of how they are, explaining it, and word of mouth carries a lot of benefit here too. So long answer to your question, but there are many tools here, and I think we should try and leverage all of them.
So is opening a bank account the first step towards financial literacy? Would it be right to say that?
Absolutely. I think the Jan Dhan Yojana was a massive program. Misha has already given us some of the statistics around it. But if you look at, even look at a MicroSave study from very recently, I was surprised to read that I'm talking about women here again. I don't know the stats on men, but out of the women who have opened bank accounts, I think about 23% of them never touch them. Actually, no, I think the number is 23% haven't opened them, but 42% are dormant users. They don't actually use their bank account. So I think opening a bank account is definitely step one, but then having the right in your household, the voice in your household to go utilize that bank account. And that I think comes with many things. You have to choose, you have to work with your partner and your family to get control over finances, be a participant in that. Also, I think distance to banks is a big issue today. How do you travel as a woman is a big issue among women that we work with. Again, that independence, building in that capability and knowledge within the family. So I think it's many different things. I think opening the bank account is just the first tiny step, but you need to go a long way beyond that.
So there's an interplay of many factors between economic independence, financial literacy, prosperity.
Yes.
And coming to you, Misha, I mean, let's take a specific case study here. you've studied many low-income households in Tamil Nadu and the impact of financial services on them. So would you like to share a couple of stories from there, and then, see if we can replicate that pan-India, for an audience sitting in, say, Lucknow, UP, Bihar? Is it possible to, the learning from there to implement them on a pan-India basis?
Sure, Gayatri. Thank you so much. Actually, Gayatri, I mean, frankly speaking, the literature on this topic is really vast because it has been a topic that is of great interest to policymakers and researchers both in India and abroad as well. So there are actually a lot of studies that have looked at what is the impact of formal financial services on the overall well-being of households, overall well-being of women and women empowerment itself. So I'd like to highlight maybe two or three studies and just, we'll just share some broad level findings on that. So first, talking about microcredit itself, right? Since that has been one of the areas where India has been very successful.
But not as successful as, say, Bangladesh. Is that right? Bangladesh has been more successful.
Definitely, Bangladesh is where it has come from, right? That is definitely the genesis because of Professor Mohammad Yunus, who started the Grameen Bank, and replicating the model. India sort of learned from that, and some of the other African and Latin American countries also learned from it. So definitely, we've learned a lot from our neighbors, and would just like to share some findings around it. So in terms of access to microcredit itself, what we've really found is that it has really hit at the heart of the matter, because what happens is, like I mentioned, these micro credit loans are given to women, and yes, it is true that women could, in a lot of instances, let their spouse make the decision about how the loan will be used. But there are some studies that have shown that once you have a microcredit from a formal financial services, your participation in the labor force actually increases, because you're more likely to invest in a business, you're more likely to become self-employed, and therefore access to microcredit has said to have integrated women in the labor force in the long run. So in the short run, it's true we've not seen huge substantial gains, but in the long run, it has shown that women are becoming more self-employed, which is really very important, like I said, like all of us in fact have said, for financial independence. Another very important study is about the impact of business training and financial planning, a lot of which Dr. Urvashi and Natasha spoke about. And here, I mean, I'll be frank, there are a little bit of mixed results. Not all financial literacy training programs or financial education interventions have found to have positive impact. So, it really depends on what is the content of the financial training program, when is the program given. So it's not just important, I mean, it doesn't suffice if you have a 2-hour literacy training program, say on an ad hoc basis, and then three months later on, you expect women to substantially change their financial behavior. So that is not the way it has evidence shows. But what does show in terms of evidence is that if you give just-in-time financial literacy programs, so for example, if I'm a woman and I'm thinking about buying an insurance product, or I'm thinking about planning for my retirement, and then there is a financial literacy program that is designed and targeted around my financial requirements and needs, then I'm more likely to have some strong takeaways coming out of it, and more likely to absorb and the sort of takeaways from that program and apply it to my particular situation. So I completely agree with Natasha on that point, which is that, financial advice should be very customer centric. It should have a customer centric approach. And if products and services are designed by keeping in mind what is it that women or what is it that the customer really needs, and what is it that would be suitable for the customer, then really the impact of that is going to be better, because then obviously it has been catered to my specific needs. So on this context, I'd say that there's some research that shows impact of business training and financial planning which has been provided to women has led to women taking a loan and starting business, and then also it has led to increase in household income and consumption. Finally, one more very interesting study that actually, Gayatri, I'm taking the liberty of going a little bit beyond Tamil Nadu. This happened in Madhya Pradesh and Gwalior, actually, to be specific, and was conducted by professors from Harvard and Duke University, where they saw that giving women control over the money they earn increases household decision making. And as we've discussed previously, that's really important. So what they did was they ensured that in rural remote areas of Madhya Pradesh, where women are employed in the NAREGA program, right, the Mahatma Gandhi NAREGA program, what they did was they opened bank accounts for women. And in order to, ensure or tackle this problem of dormancy of bank account, they ensured that the NAREGA payments were being directly credited in their bank account, as well as, the bank account was in their name. So a lot of times what happens is there's a rural woman employed in NAREGA program, but the money is going to her husband's bank account, right? So that again puts the control over money on men. So here, this study particularly sort of experimented with the fact that what happens when I open a bank account in the women's name, and then to propel usage of the bank account, I directly transfer all the benefits. And in fact, this is very relevant even in the current context, because as we know, under the Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Yojana, there's been a lot of cash transfers being given under different social protection schemes, right? And one of the schemes under which cash transfers are being given is the cash transfer under the Jan Dhan Yojana for all the accounts held by women. So again, that's something that will again propel usage. So some of these factors have led to actually, in terms of impact, it has shown that women have reported higher earnings by 25 percentage points, 60% higher bank balances. So women who received the cash transfer in their account had 60% higher bank balances, which shows that they were actively using their bank account and were more likely to make household purchases from their own money, going to show that they had the power to make the decision about where the money should be spent. Finally, I'll conclude with this, overarching finding that's across economies that has been found, is that getting money into the hands of women benefits not only women, but the society as a whole. Yeah, because research shows that women spend more than men on children's health and education. Therefore, we talk so much about access to finance, and really what is at the heart of it? The heart of it is that access to finance increases the well-being of women, sure, but also the household, and has societal impacts. So, I just wanted to conclude with that overarching statement. Thank you, Gayatri.
Not overarching, but yeah, extremely valid points. In fact, so the fact that women are becoming, many more bank accounts, a lot more money in it. And there's also a lot of research to show that when women are in charge of their finances, they spend a lot more of it on the family. So the family is better fed, the family is better educated. They make many more rational economic decisions. Yeah. So thank you, Misha. At this point, I'd also like to tell our audience that if you have any questions, do write them to us in the chat box. We also have financial planners here. If you want a financial plan, customized financial plan, you can ask Natasha here. You can, are you 22 years old? And, are you looking at, earning yourself your own college degree, or you want to set up your own enterprise like Lakshmi? Write us to us in the chat box, and we'll try and get you answers from our panel. At this point, I'd also... Yes, Praveen.
I was just wanting to add that people can also put their questions on the Q&A box, which is there on the bottom, and
the chat box and the Q&A box. Yeah,
correct. Also for the panelists, if they have any thought in terms of any poll survey they want to do quickly, they can let us know, and we can launch a poll survey right now. 1 minute with the audience which is here. Any issue which you think which can be put into a question, and with probable couple of answers to that, we can put as a poll question also. Else, if there are any questions, Gayatri, you can pick it up from chat box.
Okay. So, in fact, the question can be related to the next point I wanted to raise. Praveen, we are meeting here virtually because of the coronavirus pandemic.
Correct.
Yes. And lot more research is, coming up every day. We're getting new research that the pandemic has actually impacted women in a much bigger way than it has impacted men. It's been unfair. In fact, it would not be wrong to say it's been extremely unfair to women. Women have lost more jobs. Women are doing much more domestic work. Women are in the informal sector. Women work in services. So I think we can do a poll to ask, do you think women have been unfairly? I mean, has the pandemic affected women unfairly? Has the coronavirus, let's see what the audience has to say. Has the coronavirus pandemic affected women unfairly? Yes, Urvashi.
Gayatri, I just wanted to expand your point a little, that what it done is, it has, one, women have always been treated, they're always treated unfairly in a patriarchy. Okay, all your statistics will show you that. What this pandemic has done is, it has made existing equalities much more visible, just like the migrant labor crisis and poverty, everything has come to the fore. And in terms of, like you mentioned, domestic labor, domestic work, they were always doing that. Now what is expected is just thodi bahut rahat mil jati thi, that, oh, I'm at work, so, I would not have to do it. Now you're at home. So as somebody mentioned just yesterday in my office, said, aajkal poor thing, now everybody wants a hot meal. I wanted to ask him, everyone wants a hot meal, so kabhi aap bana diya karo. How come it doesn't occur to you that maybe men should be, what it's shown is that men must share domestic work.
Absolutely.
They must share the unpaid care work. And like women must be empowered, more than that, you need men, our boys and men, to be empowered, to step up and to be sharing the domestic work, the care work, and stop demanding so much care for themselves, but in fact help to care for everyone else, so that women can then, their time can be freed up for work that, for things that they want to do for themselves. Yeah.
Yes, Praveen, you want to start the polling now? Yes.
Yeah.
So has the COVID-19 been much worse and treated women more unfairly? Has the coronavirus pandemic treated women more unfairly than men? If you think yes, please click yes, otherwise click no. There goes my vote. Urvashi, coming back to the point you made, I know I speak for a very small subsection of Indian society, but in Mumbai, I know of many households where the men have really contributed with housework now, especially because all the building societies were not allowing domestic help, and people, unlike say in a city like Lucknow, you don't have full-time live-in. So the men have really stepped up and have started helping with the household work, and these are people so I'm just hoping that it also trickles down. And I can see that my friend is here, Aarti Singh. I have to say, Aarti's son is at Stanford, and this pandemic, when he saw his mother doing so much domestic work, so Aarti, I mean, it's a nuclear family with a husband and 2 boys, and she herself is a teacher at the American school in Mumbai, and she has so much work, with her household work and, her teaching, and her son actually learned how to make chapatis, and he said, Mom, please sit, and, I will do it for you. So I think somewhere, I think change is being made, and hopefully more men and more, the whole patriarchal thinking, if that changes, women will have it better, and ultimately the country will prosper. So has the COVID-19 pandemic treated women more unfairly? 71% say yes, and 29% say no. So I think we have a very aware audience here. Yes, Natasha, would you like to add to this? Do you have any thoughts to share on, the impact of the pandemic on, women's rights?
Absolutely. I mean, I think, the pandemic has been a shocker to everyone. And I think ultimately at its core, I mean, the numbers we have seen via, interviews as well as studies is that 45% drop in household income in certain, especially in the informal sector. That is a massive drop. And you're absolutely right. I think given that women's employment is, tends to be a little more in that informal sector, and they tend to do the heavy lifting on household work, I think it has led to some serious impacts. I don't think it's intentional that it's impacting women more, but I think all our other underlying societal behavior is getting highlighted right now. But I think, the hope, of course, here to take, the optimistic perspective is that, this is a chance for everybody to step out of that space and really start looking at how do you build out of this pandemic? How do you achieve financial independence and stability out of it? And I would say, the important thing here is that women look at themselves as much as equals in those decision-making aspects.
Absolutely. Okay. We have one audience question, which is,
Gayatri, may I have a stab at that?
what's your suggestion to control?
I'll tell you this. My answer to the question was that what can we do to reduce the number of divorces, control increasing divorce cases in youngsters? May I answer that very, very briefly? One, what has happened is, whereas more and more women are getting educated, understanding their rights and demanding them and demanding equality, we have not educated our boys to respect women as equals. And so there's this lag, okay? Even families really expect women to continue to play the traditional role, still go out to work, still do everything. And so what happens is, when women are demanding equality and treating themselves as equal, some of them who do think like that, then there's a rude cultural shock to a lot of the young boys who are raised with a sense of entitlement. So what do we do to control that? One, most importantly, I think, let's educate and empower our boys to think of women as equals. Let's upskill them by learning how to do housework and all the care functions. ये तो पीछे रह जाएंगे. Women can do that and बाहर का काम. तो दोनों करो ना मिलकर. So the point is, let us show them a different way of being married, a more equal partnership. When they learn that it's going to be an equal partnership, then they will learn to behave differently, and then also learn to welcome the empowered women who they have married. Yeah? You can't expect a whole patriarchal system to remain intact and then women get empowered. वो नहीं होने का. You need both. That's why I said empower boys and men to think of women as equal.
Absolutely.
To learn, upskill them to learn to do housework, domestic work, and childcare. They need to be upskilled. Ye skill छूट गया. So let's teach them.
Yeah.
Very simple.
Yeah, like absolutely. Boys need to be upskilled like everyone these days. I mean, you should know whether you're a boy or a girl, you should know how to cook, you should know how to drive, you should know how to take care of the household, discuss across gender so that, women don't have to bear the burden of the extra domestic work.
Atmanirbharta, all round.
So there's a comment from Muhammad Yunus, proof that poor are more likely to return the loan than the rich, and the women are more likely to default, and women are much less likely to default on a loan than men. Yes, it's exactly the point we've been making. So it's about nearly time to wrap up. So I'll ask my three panelists now, if there were 2 steps that, we should undertake, because the International Financial Literacy Conclave is looking at actionable agenda. If there were 2 things, one had to do to really empower women and lead us to economic prosperity, what would they be? Misha, I'd like to start with you this time.
Yeah, sure, Gayatri. I think one of the things that I think I really care about is our participation in workforce. And I think there we're doing really badly. Like I said, we're just at 20%. So if there's one thing that, we as women need to really step up, it is to, be more financially independent and take steps to enter the labor market. Obviously, I completely acknowledge Dr. Urvashi ma'am's points, that it's a lot to do with patriarchy, social norms and attitudes. So it's actually not just in our hands. It needs a complete change and shift in mindset of our society altogether, because that's really one of the crucial factors that's holding us back in terms of our economic and financial mobility. So I'd say definitely more participation in the labor force and a change in the mindsets of our society.
Okay. Yeah, Natasha, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Gayatri. I think for me, the 2 would be, so one, definitely is to start understanding and participating in what are my family's financial goals. Really, at this moment, where do I stand? Where do I want to be 3 years from now? Where do I want to be 5 years from now? Where do I want to be 10 years from now? And really taking those questions, not hesitating to have those discussions in your households. And I can promise every woman and man in this audience that if they do that, women are known to be extremely disciplined and goal oriented. So if they start participating in what those goals are, I am confident that they will ask themselves the right question, which will lead them to more financial independence. Because if you ask yourself and you believe that you are part of the solution to that problem, then you will try to find the tools that help you achieve those goals. That should not be somebody else's problem. That should be the woman's problem in the house. So whether it's educating your child, whether it's preparing for a marriage of your child, whether it is expanding your house to have an extra room, whether it is buying a two-wheeler for the family, or whether it's as simple as investing in a smartphone for the first time, I think the woman should be involved in thinking about how do I build up that 10,000 or the 50,000 or the 1 lakh that's required to achieve that goal. So that's my first one, is really being part of that conversation around financial goals and being goal oriented. I think the second one, I would agree with Misha and, just take her point a step further. I do believe the second point is every woman should believe that she can work and that she should have her own income. That is the core of financial independence, and it can come in many forms. It can come in many ways, and it does not mean not supporting your family. So truly believing that you can be part of the workforce is very important. I would add one more very important point to this, which is it is not just when you graduate school or college, it is also after you have your children. And coming back into the economic workforce is a problem many women face. Yes. And it's a struggle many women face. And knowing that they can do that and that career gap is okay to take, but that it is important to continue to invest in that financial independence is also very, very important for any woman's well-being. So I would say that those would be my 2 points.
Great.
Gayatri, quickly, my 2 points. One is, I think, as an educator, I really believe in education as being a very powerful transformative force, but provided it's transformed, I think we need to include critical feminist pedagogy in school curricula. We have agitated really hard for it, and it is being included now in the state. Gender studies for girls and boys both. And secondly, we should include financial literacy and life planning, right? From the time when they can, class 8, 9 is a good time to start thinking about these things. We got all our children bank accounts as part of that yojana, and we teach them how to work at that. And then lastly, I spoke a lot about unpaid care work, and it should be regendered. And this is one Professor Ghosh from JNU, she had this mantra: recognize, reduce, and redistribute. Okay. Men must learn to share the burden equally. And Natasha, for many women, middle class women, working is it's seen as a sign of liberation. Let me tell you the other way. That Lakshmi told me that her mother had just had chicken pox. She'd had a baby. She had to go to work in 13 days' time because she couldn't afford it, right? You need that. There's the other flip side of it also. And the government must take care of social services which enable women to work, reduce gender-based violence in the workplace, on the streets. Women are frightened of access. Families are afraid to send them. And all of this keeps them away from the labor force. So how do you make our society, our workplaces, more hospitable places for women's economic empowerment? And of course, I can't say this loud enough, that once again, स्वराज मेरा जन्म सिद्ध अधिकार है और उसको मैं लेकर रहूंगी, that women, girls must be taught right from the womb actually, and from birth, that they have a right, and economic rights, by the way, economic rights literacy, and that includes just human rights, just your own rights. Is a very important thing. Lessons of equality must be taught to boys and girls as part of the official curriculum and be taken as seriously as your lessons of math, science, history, geography, etc. One man said this to me once. He was the principal of a school and I was training in Rajasthan. I was training them. He came to me and he said, "Madam, ek baat kahun." I said, "Kya bhai sahab?" He says, जब जेंडर की बात होती है तो मैं समझता था कि अरे इतना शोर शराबा होता रहता है जेंडर के लिए, वहाँ खांसी जुकाम की तरह है। लेकिन आज मुझे समझ में आया कि ये कैंसर की तरह है और उसको बहुत सीरियसली लेना चाहिए। And I want to end with his voice. वाकई gender equality, आत्मनिर्भरता for girls, economic rights, economic independence is a serious issue. Until our country does not beat the gender problem, take it seriously and really address it, we will lose out big time. Patriarchy has no place in a democracy and it should not be there. It is contradictory of the core values. So it should really not be there. Okay. So that's all. Thank you very much, Evoke India.
Yes.
And thank you very much, Natasha, Misha. Lots to learn.
Thank you, Dr.
Thank you very
Sahni,
much.
Natasha, Misha. I think, Praveen, would you like me to go over the points? Or I think the next session is starting. You would ask for actionable agenda. We have a list of 9 here. You want me to list it out, or I can put it in the...
So we will certainly have it, from you. It's been a wonderful session. I think very informative and enriching for all the audience and for all of us at Evoke India. We are really thankful to all of you. An excellent session because we have the next session back to back, and some of the speakers are already there in the waiting. So thanks a lot, Dr. Urvashi Sahni ji and Misha and Natasha and of course Gayatri for wonderfully hosting this session.
I'd like to ask one last comment of my own, Praveen.
Please do.
So I just want to say that, the time to deliberate on women's empowerment for economic prosperity is over. This is the time to act now. And if we don't act now, the demographic dividend that we keep on talking of, we will just lose that. So it's really time to act on the agenda.
That's what Evoke India is committed to. For the next 1 year, we are committed to action on this, whatever deliberations have happened. And that's our word. So thanks very much. Thanks all. All the best. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Lovely session. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Gayatri.
Yeah, thank
Thank
you. Yeah,
So,
lots to think about.